Hello, my lovelies. So, I wanted to give you a good summary of Paradise Lost because it's an important part of our reading section today, as we will discuss later. However, I couldn't find a video summary that was one, interesting, and two, school appropriate. So, I do promise that this is going to be school appropriate. I hope that you find it interesting. But yeah, let's go over some Paradise Lost. So, Paradise Lost is by John Milton, who is this guy right here with the fabulous hair and the wonderful collar. It is an epic poem, not like an epic poem, but like an epic poem, kind of like the Odyssey and the Iliad. An epic poem is a narrative poem about a hero and his exploits. It usually involves war, lots of random discussions about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and then a little bit more war as well. And oddly enough, sometimes horses. So Paradise Lost is kind of like a not an off-brand epic poem, but a different one in its true sense for two main reasons. The first one is that it was written in English. Most epic poems were either written in Greek or in Latin. So this is kind of written in like the commoner language of English. The second one is that it wasn't about Greek or Roman heroes like Achilles. It was about biblical heroes or like Satan, God, Jesus, you know the ones. So, summary time. So we begin with Satan. Wait, not this Satan. This Satan. Yeah, this guy. This angsty boy. So Milton kind of reframed how we see Satan and kind of positioned him as an anti-hero. An anti-hero is somebody who we don't necessarily like, but we're going to be rooting for. Kind of think Deadpool in the movie, Deadpool, where we might not like his character, but we're rooting for him to succeed. That's kind of how Milton wanted Satan to be viewed in this epic poem. So it's told from his point of view. We're really shown how he viewed the book of Genesis, and Milton kind of wants us to show sympathy for him. This kind of, for lack of a better word, hot Satan has been continued through our pop culture references. So if you're ever wondering where all of these like hot people coming in to play Lucifer or Satan, where that came from, you can thank Milton for that. So, anyway, Paradise Lost begins with Satan, obviously, and right after the war between God and Satan and his followers, where God ultimately cast Satan out of heaven. But Satan is very unconcerned about this. He in fact gathers all of his followers into a very big building called the Pandemonium and tells them, yo, everybody, don't worry about it. I have a plan. Those cool cats that God is creating right now? Well, I'm going to tempt them to fall into original sin. They're going to join us down in heaven. We're all going to have a really great party. And his followers go nuts. They're like, yes, Satan, yes. Oh my gosh, what a good plan. And he's like, I know, right? I thought of it myself. So very emboldened by this support, he flies off to the gates of hell, where he discovers the two guards. One is his daughter, Sin, and his grandson, don't ask, it's a weird family dynamic, Death. The two of them are like, no, Satan, you can't go through. Clearly, like, we locked you in here for a reason. God told us not to let you out. And he's like, but like, y'all are my children. Is God your dad? I didn't think so. You're my children. Let me through. And they're like, I mean, I guess you're right. Peace out, Girl Scout. So Satan flies off very, very high and mighty to go find these beings that God has created. So then we jump to heaven, where God and Jesus are clearly hanging out with all their angel friends. Yeah, that God. So they're kind of chatting, and God knows exactly what Satan's plans are, but he seems very unconcerned about the whole thing. Jesus is like, but like they can't join us in heaven if they have original sin. You know that, right? And God's like, oh, shoot, you're super right. I wonder if there's somebody who could just, like, I don't know, like die for their sins eventually. I don't know. Is there anybody who could do that? I don't know. Maybe, I don't know, like you could possibly, I don't know, like sacrifice yourself. And Jesus is like, I mean, I guess. Sounds great, God, whatever you need. So God goes into this very detailed plan of how Jesus is going to be born as a human, and then he's going to die as a human very painfully, then get into this really epic fight with Satan, defeat him, start the rapture, seal in Satan in hell, and then eventually rule over heaven and the entire cosmos. But like, no pressure though. So then we go back to our boy, the anti-hero, Satan himself, with some information he gleaned from the sun angel Uriel. He discovers that the Garden of Eden is being kept on Earth. So he flies very swiftly there and lands straight in the middle of paradise. After an accidental moment of self-reflection, where he wonders if the real hell is the misery he has inflicted on himself, Satan just goes and spies on Adam and Eve, looking for a weak spot. He kind of overhears that the only rule that God has given Adam and Eve is to not eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So he instantly is like, well, if that's the only rule we can break, then we're breaking it. And then kind of hatches a plot on how to get them to eat from that tree. So the next morning, Adam and Eve are kind of snuggling, and Eve is like, yo, Adam, I had this crazy dream last night. It had this, this like super duper hot angel in it. And once I ate from the tree of knowledge and good and evil, it whisked me into heaven. 3 guesses who that angel may have been. Wink, wink. So Adam is like super duper not concerned with this really odd dream that Eve has had, especially considering that she's like dreaming about like some other person. He's like, I mean, okay, sounds great. Just forget about it. And Eve's like, cool. That night, Raphael comes to visit Adam and Eve and have dinner with them, and to like low-key see if they have seen Lucifer or Satan. And they're like, who is this man you speak of, Raphael? We have not seen him. Oh my gosh. Completely failing to mention Eve's suspicious dream from the night before. Raphael continues to explain that Satan was God's favorite angel kind of before Jesus was made. Like after that, Lucifer quickly fell out of favor with God and was replaced by Jesus. That made Satan very not happy, and he gathered a bunch of forces and basically waged a war against God. And we all know how that turned out. God threw Satan out of heaven into hell, and now we're brought up to speed from where Paradise Lost started. Everyone is brought up to speed, at least, besides Eve, who decided she was super bored with Raphael's story, like halfway through, and bounced and went to bed before she could hear the rest of it. The next day, Eve is kind of out and about in the garden, and who does she meet but Satan, disguised as snake. He does not look like this. He looks more like a snake. And we kind of all know what happens next. Satan tempts Eve to eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Eve tempts Adam, and he eats the fruit. Um, they both realize that they made like a very terrible decision, especially when God comes, roasts them, and kicks them out of the paradise pool. Back in hell, Satan is partying up with his homies really high off of a successful temptation trip when everyone is turned into snakes by God. Not even cool ones with legs, just a bunch of nope ropes and boob snoops. Even though Satan soon returns to his hot anti-hero self soon, the message is clear, and the snakes are forever a symbol for evil and the devil as well. So before they're kicked out completely of the Garden of Eden, God does show Adam kind of the future or how Satan will eventually receive his comeuppance, which is essentially like the Bible on fast forward, kind of go like giving him the Cliff Notes version of what he gave Jesus before. Just kind of showing him that like, hey, you know, you may have sinned, but like we're still bros, we're still homies. I do indeed still love you. So the epic poem kind of ends on a semi-happy note, I guess you could say, with Adam and Eve still kicked out of paradise. They have lost paradise, but they're hopeful that Satan will eventually receive his due diligence in the way future. So I know what all of you are probably thinking at this point. What does this have to do with Frankenstein? Well, I will tell you. Remember where we are at the novel. Victor and the creature have kind of met in this very icy tundra, and the creature is telling his side of the story. Remember chapters 11 through 15, what we just read, were entirely the creature's story. And if you remember, in the kind of the middle of chapter 15, the creature finds all of these books that he reads, and one of those books is, you guessed it, Paradise Lost. In fact, it is the book that he most identifies with. In fact, he says, like Adam, I was inherently united by no link to any other being in existence, but many times I considered Satan as the fitter emblem of my condition. So he's reading Paradise Lost like it is a true historical account, like all of these things really happened. So he's viewing Adam as like a real person that like lived like 5 seconds ago, and Satan as a real person who lived like 5 seconds ago. So he's finally kind of identifying with something that like really existed in this world, something very tangible, rather than kind of viewing this as a poem. He views it as like a very like literal textbook. So he's like, wow, people exist who are like me. And this kind of sets the chain reaction for him to really talk to his benefactors to kind of create that humanistic connection with his benefactors, as he calls them, the DeLacy and his children as well. And then once after that, kind of finding his creator, which leads him to Victor. As we read further into this, we'll kind of get more into his, I guess you could say, fall. But I guess my main question for you is, now that you know what Paradise Lost is and how the creature really identified with it, which one do you think he's more like? Do you think that he is more like Adam, with kind of just this like alone being kind of wandering around until his creator might possibly make somebody else for him, or is he more like Satan in this like very like bald persona per se. So as we go into the weekend, uh, gotta cite your sources, kids. So yeah, as I was saying, these are just a couple of reminders for you going into the weekend, just giving you the homework. Answer the actively learned questions. That's where this video is going to be held. There are questions throughout this video, as well as the question that I just posed to you, who you think the creature is more like at this point in the story, either Adam or Satan. So just make sure that you go back and you answer all of those questions before you submit it. This will be due by Tuesday, the beginning of class. Do the discussion questions on Google Classroom. This has two parts to it, which I will explain in more detail in Tuesday's class as well, but two parts to it. The first part is that you need to answer a question on Google Classroom. So just one, pick one of the three and answer it with a very good thought out response. Try to shoot for like 250 words, just like a nice solid paragraph, something that like really encapsulates your thoughts on the matter and demonstrates that like you read. The second part is that, the first part, that first question, let's say that that's due by the end of the day, Thursday. But if that's not possible I know that some people are doing the sophomore retreat. If that's not possible, get it done by at least like the beginning of the weekend. So the end of the day on Friday. So, first part, answer a question by the end of the day, Friday. Second part, you need to respond to one of your classmates. That response doesn't have to be nearly as long, but I want it to be a little bit more than, oh yeah, I agree with you, period, submit. Like, be a little bit more thought-provoking than that. That response is due by the beginning of class on Tuesday. Then reading, obviously, read chapters 16 through 20. We're almost done with the book, everybody. Oh my gosh. 16 through 20 due by class on Tuesday. That is it for you. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm sorry it was a little long, but like it was all good information. These are my works cited for all of the pictures to prove that I did not steal any of them or paint them all myself. In addition, the extra noises in the background, if you could or could not hear them, were provided by my dog. So I hope you have a wonderful weekend. For those of you going on the sophomore retreat, you have a wonderful time, and I will see you on Tuesday for class.